Welcome back to the Bazaar. I'm Inko, and it's time for another end-of-month recap where I see what my stats were throughout the month of playing. This month's going to be a little bit weird. See, I'm ranked 3,100, which is really low. I'm recording this at 5 p.m. US Central Time, the Tuesday right before patch reset. There are less than 24 hours left in the season. This is the legend rank I received upon entering legend just now. I wasn't able to upload for a good chunk of May. I was on hiatus from YouTube, but that was also a hiatus from the Bazaar and even consuming Bazaar content. I wasn't watching videos, I didn't know what the meta was like, I wasn't even logging in to do daily quests and tickets a lot of the time. So anyone who's wondering, hey, where's Bazaar talks for the current patch? Why didn't you do a feedback and save the meta video? I didn't know what the state of the meta was. I couldn't give good intelligent feedback because I wasn't playing the game. And the reason I'm saying this now is not to justify why I'm at a low rank in legend. That doesn't matter, it just means I didn't play the game as much as people at higher ranks. The reason I'm saying it is because it actually entails something interesting about the stats we're about to look at. Anyone who's played this game a lot knows that right when patches go live, especially the season launch patch, the game is tremendously easier. There are way more casual players in the pool, the average quality of your opponents goes way down, and information about what is powerful and what is meta hasn't been established yet. And since everyone is really struggling to figure it out on their own, it's much easier for excellent players to get ahead of the curve and have stupidly high win rates in those opening days. Comparatively, at the end of the month, right before the next season, almost no casual players are left. Most people are only playing a game or two a day, if that. But most importantly, the meta is solved, and that makes the game tremendously harder, especially if you come back from a hiatus and you don't know what the solved meta is. And the Bazaar is not like solved in the way that Hearthstone or competitive card games get solved, but certainly there's an edge to be had from knowing how the meta works. So for this month's video, whatever my stats are, I haven't actually calculated them yet. I'm going to pause the video and do that after this. They're probably going to be a lot worse than my stats for most months, and that's because I did, I think, all of gold through diamond in the past 3 days. I've done the majority of my grind during the absolute hardest point of the season and played very few games when the ladder was easier. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how that reflects in my stats, and obviously my stats are going to be real weird because it's a pretty low sample size of how little I actually got to play the game this month. Anyways, I'll be back with you in a second once I can actually calculate these things. Oh, and before I really get into the stats, I'm going to take a moment to remind you that you can sub to the channel for more daily Bazaar content just like this. And if you could leave a like on the video, it really does boost it up in the algorithm, help the channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. Anyways, on with the number crunching. Oh boy. Okay, so I've done the math, and the numbers are about as bad as I expected them to be, maybe even a little worse. Let's get into it. In the past, I sort of felt like I was reading out math equations and just listing numbers when I did these videos. Not going to do that anymore. I'm going to put up the math on the screen somewhere, and I'm going to tell you the conclusion and talk about my experience with the character over the course of this season. Let's start with Dooley. I'm going to go from least played to most played in this month, and with Dooley compared to the previous month, I have played 3 games. However, I've won 2 of them, which actually puts Dooley at my highest win rate at 66%, probably due to his low sample size. However, another stat I'm calculating is not just what is my average 10 win rate, because that's not really as interesting to me as your actual average win count. And you can't check that here. Like how many games did you get what wins on is not a thing, but you can figure it out the hard way. Because if you go to games played, you can see I played 111 on Dooley, and you can see over the course of those, I beat 852. So if I have my stats from last month, which I do, I can do this numbers, figure out what my average win rate was, compare it to last month, and then using the difference, find out my average win rate this month. Won't be repeating that for every character, obviously, but for Dooley this month, I lost 1 game, by which I mean I failed to go 10 by a single win. My average wins in a run was 9.66. I went 10 twice and 9 once, which is by far the highest that stat will ever be in any of these videos ever again. Now, my experience with Dooley this month can be summarized entirely as, dude, the core with Nitrogen Hammer is pretty sick. There's a lot of ways you can build it. It's really strong. It's fundamentally powerful. It's kind of occupying the spot Drill used to for Dooley, where Nitrogen Hammer is probably much more powerful than the other things Dooley has available to him, but it's not really much more powerful than what the other heroes are doing. I don't really want to see Nitrogen Hammer nerfed, at least not very severely. I mostly just want to see other Dooley strategies continue to be incrementally made better. Now, coming over to my second most played hero this month, it's Pygmalien. It's a far cry from being a pig main today. Over the course of May for Pygmalien, I have a 41% 10 win rate across 12 games, which is still not a lot of games played, and not a very good win rate either. Going down to check out how many people I beat total and comparing that to last month, I can find out that my average wins per run on Pygmalien was 7.5. As we discuss the other characters, you're gonna find out that my Pygmalien win rate here is pretty much the story of this season for me. 7.5 average wins per run really isn't that bad. I would like to be doing better than it, but a 41% 10 win rate feels terrible for me. Now that sort of stat spread, a fairly abysmal, at least for me, 10 win percent, combined with a pretty all right average wins per run, is gonna be the story of this month for everyone except Dooley. And you could sort of see it in my video recording, right, what I uploaded, because there was that 9-win run I posted for Pig, where I had a Pygmalien drum infinite with a multicast yo-yo and a snowmobile, and the drum was shielded and it had a wrist warrior next to it, right? And that run went 9 wins. And so much of this month at the last half was me making sick ass builds that were really, really satisfying to play and seemed really cool, and then failing to go 10 wins with them. And I don't know if it's just average player quality in the game steadily improving and casual players playing less towards the end of the month, or if I'm just worse at the game than I used to be, but it's been brutal. And those sorts of games being so common this month is a part of why you were seeing more non-10 win uploads. As for my experience with Pygmalien, I've got to say, I absolutely hate the old styles of Pig. It's sort of why I've stopped being a Pig man. And it's because when you're doing any sort of scaling value Pygmalien, whether it's money tree or fixer upper, pretty much anything, you end up in a spot where you live or die almost entirely on what random enchants you get, right? That's sort of why I lean towards Kiwas and fixer upper when I'm doing any sort of value scaling, is because those have built-in win conditions, right? I hate relying on money tree. And these sorts of play patterns where I'm reliant on what enchant I get for my build to be viable to go 10 wins are really unpleasant. Not like if you hit the nuts, you will go 10. Getting an obsidian money tree doesn't just send you to 10 wins. I failed to close that build out multiple times. This month, I found myself having a lot more fun with Weapon Pig, with Freeze Pig, even with Silk Pig, although none of those videos made it to the channel. Silk Pig was literally the last game I played to get into Legend, absolutely steamrolled that run. And I've got to say, I feel like every Pig build other than value scaling is a blast to play. The more I focus on value scaling when I play Pig, the less fun I have and the more frustrating the character feels. And I don't know if I'm changing or if value scaling is just getting more balanced, but it sort of feels like a balanced version of value scaling is so feast or famine that every other playstyle is more fun for me. Next up, my second most played hero of the month, Mac. I really haven't gotten to play that much Mac, have I? I mean, I guess looking at this, I haven't gotten to play that much of the game as a whole. There's less than 500 games here. I've got to start putting my hours in. I've only played 400 hours. I'm basically a casual over here. Anyways, over the course of this month, while Mac might have been my second most played character at a staggering 15 games, the win rate is equally staggering at 33%, which is the lowest number I think I've had in any of these videos so far. Bit of a highs and lows video, mostly lows. Kind of expected that going in, but still got to record it. Can't just post the stats when they're good. This is how you learn. And I'm kind of curious how much of this is me learning I'm out of practice and bad, and how much of this is me learning that the end of the month is just disproportionately harder than the start. However, even though I'm only winning a third of my runs on Mac, if we were to actually calculate what my average win rate was in terms of how many games I won in a run, then that is actually just as good as Pig. Mac is sitting at 7.4 average wins per run. He's failing to close out a whole hell of a lot more of those runs than I was on Pig. And now that I look at the stats, I felt like I was losing a lot more on Mac than on Pig. And yeah, there's an 8% gap between them. Pig was at 41%, Mac's at 33%. But honestly, the stats are pretty similar. I guess it feels a lot worse. You can really feel 8% when you're experiencing 8% more losses, right? How do I feel about Mac this month? Weapon Mac is obviously busted. The mid-game power of Weapon Mac is unrivaled by literally anything else in the game. It's just very easy to go out on day 10 through 12 on a Weapon Mac. Even if you get to the late game, if you end up fighting anyone who's just like playing a relatively fair build, a Weapon Mac can still run them over. But that's like saying you can beat low rolls. The bigger thing is that Weapon Mac fairly easily converts into an infinite combo with the runic daggers and the magic carpet. There's also plenty of other nonsense Mac can be building in the background to pivot into. I feel like Weapon Mac stands out as being too strong. I don't know how much of a nerf he really needs though, because the main thing that's making Weapon Mac too strong is that you can pretty consistently find all of it every run, and adding 5 new bronze medium items to Mac's pool will inherently make him worse at finding magic carpet specifically, right? And also, later down the line, Pendulum. So I'm not really sure from a balance perspective if I think anything with Mac needs to change. I feel like, by and large, all of his crazy stuff with Calcinator and library combos and stuff like that in the late game while the top end craziness is absolutely insane. See Retromation's video from yesterday. I think on average, most of Mac's late game stuff is pretty much like fine. It's not that outrageous. His freeze lockout strats can be a little bit too much maybe, but I don't really feel like anything other than weapon Mac was a problem in the meta. And I say this primarily as a thing where it's like, not even necessarily about balance, but every time I sit down to play the game, so often in these runs that were failing to go 10 wins, I was just like, oh shit, it's Magic Carpet Mac. Guess I was never winning the fight today. It very much felt, I'll talk about it in a second with skill start on Vanessa, but it very much felt like my win rate on other characters was to some degree dictated by how many people I ran into running Magic Carpet Mac builds. And I think that's a really good indication that something is way too strong in the meta when you see it all the time and your win rate is directly proportional to how often it doesn't show up in your run. Which brings us to my last and therefore most played character, Vanessa. You're never going to believe this, but over the course of 36 games this month on Vanessa, I managed to hit a 36% win rate. And if you calc out what the average wins per run was, it was 7.63. Just like right in line with the other two. Roughly the same 10 win rate, roughly the same average wins per run. With the exception of Dooley, who I didn't play very many games on, so it's obviously not a real indicator of balance, I performed almost identically on all three characters regardless of sample size. So the good news is I'm not a one-trick pony Pygmalien, I'm doing just as badly on everyone. The bad news is, yeah, it's not doing great. But how do I feel about the games on Vanessa that I've been playing? I've got to say, Eels is a huge fucking problem. I see so many people talking about how Eels have counters. Anyone who played Eels in the last 2 days of the season obviously knows that, right? There are counters for Eels everywhere. When you're like, if you freeze their board forever, you win. If you one-shot them, you win. It's like, oh, the most broken stuff in the game beats Eels? Wow, I had no idea. The existence of counters does not make a build all right. Just like I was saying with Mac, how your win rate is to some degree inversely proportional to how often you see Magic Carpet Mac blow you up instantly in the mid game. Exact same thing in the late game with Eel Vanessa, right? Eel Vanessa is definitively too strong. At this point, the meta is revolving around it so heavily that playing Eels will probably not take you to 10 wins in most of your runs. But all the same, it's still completely fucking broken. And I think most of that comes down to custom scope, right? If you look at Fiber Optics and Pendulum, the other cards in the game that say, do a thing on one item, charge a different item, both of those start at gold tier, right? Custom scope starts at silver. It's much easier to find and has a very similar effect. Regardless of the fact that heroes are allowed to be different, cards are allowed to be different, it stands out that Eels never broke the game until custom scope entered the game, and custom scope does not start at the same tier as all the other similar cards. I firmly believe custom scope is the problem there, and I have seen plenty of broken runs doing the same sort of thing with very fast katanas or shiny fangs, right? Custom scope is the problem. Maybe Eels are also problematic. I'm not going to say just like Eels are not a problem. I like Eels. I don't think individually they're a problem. The issue is custom scope allows them to self-scale in a way that they were never designed to. As for the rest of Vanessa, I feel like she's in a fairly good spot right now. Aquatic Vanessa, maybe not so much. When I say that, I mean like classic poison Vanessa, right? But all the variations of shot classes Vanessa, whether you're talking about Shark Ray, Arbalest, or Mantis Shrimp, are great. You can even make some good enough jank boards that are missing those using other cards like Anglerfish and Salt Claw, especially in the mid game. Tortuga is fantastic. There are a couple of crazy strategies involving poker table with solo friends. Shark Ray is the best, but you can do it with several. And Wide Weapon Vanessa is still rock solid. I had plenty of runs in my grind to Legend where I just basically ran people over with Cannonade and a pile of garbage. I feel like generally Vanessa's in a good spot, and if we have another patch like we so frequently do, where a bunch of things in balance change and Vanessa's weapon builds don't get nerfed, I might expect Weapon Vanessa to dominate tomorrow's meta. I guess today's meta as you watch this. Because right now, I'll get into it in a second. We're going to circle back to that. I'm going to say that aside from Aquatic Vanessa, there are some like standout bad weapons that are like so bad they have no niche in the game. Looking at you, Grappling Hook. There are plenty of others though. And like some of those shittier cards that have no purpose do need to be buffed up as always. And Poison being weak isn't even like related to Poison, right? Unless your Poison build is absolutely insane, you just lose to Eels. You just lose to infinite Magic Carpet combos. You lose to infinite Drum combos. The explosivity and aggro of the meta makes Poison a non-viable strategy from the word go, right? I can't even really accurately say if Poison needs to be buffed because the things oppressing it are the problem, not Poison's weakness. I think Poison's weak beyond that, but I honestly don't know how weak. Now, getting into how I've been playing Vanessa a bit, I've not posted any skill start Vanessa on the channel, but I actually played probably more of that in the past 2 days than I did of income start Vanessa in the rest of the month put together when I was grinding to legend. And then I've played an absolute shitload of skill start Vanessa in the past 2 days. I've got to say, it's better than I thought it was, and it's also a lot worse than I thought it was. So here's how it's better. It's way more consistent than I gave it credit for. I don't think Vanessa can get heal skills at all, and I don't know if shield skills show up at the start. I certainly never had to settle on one. Across all of the games I played on skill start, I had to start with a poison skill once and a crit skill once, and every single other game was either a burn skill, a weapon skill, or arms dealer, right? The consistency of the weapon skill start, or just, well, yeah, I gave it away, right? The skill start is so consistent, I just had a Freudian slip and called it the weapon skill start, because that's how it felt when I was grinding. Now, having said that, it doesn't actually make it as good as I thought it would be. And I think a lot of that comes down to weapon mac being completely insane right now. Because these cracked skill start runs I've been having on Vanessa that would in past metas have gone Diamond Victory, went on 11, went on 12, stuff like that. They're getting blown out day 4, day 7, day 9, all throughout the mid game, just constantly by weapon mac. Because whether I'm playing a burn build or a weapon build, unless I've high rolled pretty hard on a weapon build, weapon mac will usually start popping off before me, heal through the damage and kill me first. And so skill start Vanessa ends up performing tremendously worse than I would expect, not because it's bad in any capacity, but because it's a strategy designed to win early that is being countered by a really meta strategy that is everywhere on the ladder. It's sort of the same thing as playing for the late game and being vulnerable to eels right now. I genuinely think that if weapon Vanessa goes unchanged with a new set making weapon mac less consistent, and especially if other powerful mid-game strategies receive nerfs, skill start Vanessa might be absolutely insane tonight. The only reason it's not completely cracked right now is somewhere between it's the last day of the month, nothing is cracked, and it's not better than one of the most common strategies for one of the most common heroes. But generally, I feel great about the place Vanessa's in, which is good. It's the starting hero, and I feel like it has so much versatility. I really do prefer income start to skill start. I'm not convinced it'll be better. It'll depend on how the meta shakes up. The reason I like income start so much more is mostly due to a morale difference, to be honest with you. Losing days 1 through 4 on income start, not a big deal. Gonna go to all the shops, gonna make a sick Tortuga build. We're cruising, we're chilling, we're fine. You lose days 1 and 3 on your skill start though, oh my God, it's the most demoralizing thing in the world. You already know that on day 12, you're down 30 gold and whatever pivots you might have had access to, you have so few left. It's just a deeply demoralizing thing, and something I find is often overstated is how much better your win rate is with a skill start than an income start in the first place. You are very capable of losing to higher high rolls on skill start, very capable of winning against lower low rolls on an income start. And the actual difference between the two isn't as high as the difference in their power level would imply, because opponent RNG and just straight up variance comes into it so much. So while I personally love income start, and in super hostile metas like the current one, I actually do think it's better, I would be unsurprised to think skill start Vanessa is just going to dominate the metagame on day 1 of season 3. And that's probably just a true statement in every day 1 of every season, because people are gonna be like, I'm gonna do the quest, I'm gonna do all the max stuff, I'm gonna get my economy, I'm gonna solve the blank slate, and you're gonna cruise in there with shark claws, a katana, and no joy in your heart, and shit all over their chances of actually making it to day 12 and finishing their quest line. And you know what? It's a dirty job, but someone's gotta do it. Aggro has its place in every card game. Despite the fact that my win rate has been atrocious this month, and it really has, my 10 win % lifetime graphic here is looking the worst it's ever looked, I think. But despite that, I have had a lot of fun with the game. I think the meta is slowly moving towards a better direction. There are some obvious standout issues. There have been better, healthier metas than this one, and I'm kind of surprised there wasn't a hot fix in the last 2 weeks for the eel problem and the magic carpet problem. But oh well, not a huge deal. The meta was playable. It was not like a nightmarish problem. You're still able to climb the ladder in the final days of the month. And I'm glad I made it to Legend at all, and I'm glad I have something to show in a stat tracking video beyond just, hey, I suck at the game. I'm glad to see that all of my characters are sitting comfortably above 7 average wins. I'm kind of surprised it's that low, but it makes sense, right? There's not that far above 7 to finish, and there's a lot below 7 if you bomb out early. So it makes sense that despite feeling like I've done pretty well, I'm lower in the 7.x range than I would expect to be. Anyways, next month, this season, I'm looking to play the game a lot more. Hopefully, I'll be able to grind to legend in like the opening week and immediately start getting comfortable doing over-explained runs again, doing Bazaar talks immediately, because I miss doing those sorts of things. I just didn't have the expertise required in this meta. It shows to some degree in my win rate, but mostly I think that's just, you don't want 100% of your games to happen in the last 2 weeks of the month, man. That's a much harder meta. And I think next month will be, if I do have time to do what I want to do and grind it out in the opening week, it's going to be comically better stats than we're showing today. Anyways, for now, I'm done. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.